Welcome to the next lesson in the WiSys Form Studio video training series. Today we are going to expand upon our simple form we created a few lessons ago and add some lookups to the fields we already added to the form. So let's get started by launching Form Studio. Select our database, open our training project, and we're going to open the form that we copied in our last lesson. So if you recall, we just built a simple form to prove that we could capture some data, press a button, and successfully perform a Macola business transaction. Today we want to begin expanding on that form and add some lookups to the fields. When we emulate the form, these three little dots, or the ellipsis, indicates that there's a lookup function available for this field. Now in this case, when we press that button, it's not doing anything, and it should present us with a list of items from the database to choose from. Likewise, the location field would do the same thing. So we're going to close this, and we're going to select our item, and if you move over to the current item section on the right, you'll see where there's a lookup, and it says it's not defined. And then there's also Lookup SQL, and it says click here to define. So we're going to click here to add some SQL code to do a lookup on our tables. You have to be familiar a little bit with the Macola database to know where to look for data. So I happen to know that the items are contained in the table called IMITM IDX. So we're just going to scroll down here until we find that table. Okay, so here's that table. But if you notice, there's one that's underscore SQL, and then there's another one that's underscore WV. The underscore SQL table is the Macola table in the database. Anytime you see a table name with an underscore WV after it, that stands for WiSys view. What WiSys has done is written views to normalize the differences between the tables in Macola Progression and Macola ES or EM10. So I would always recommend using the WiSys view when you're developing forms. So I'm going to double click the WiSys view, and it brings up a list of tables. Now all I need to do is check the fields that I want to show up in my lookup. So I would like to see the item number and also the description. And as you can see, it's building the SQL for me. This alias field up here is for the column headings when it displays the list. So I'm going to give these some values and say item and description. And as you can see, it alters my SQL and puts the alias names that I created. The last thing we need to do is select a return field to take back to the form and populate the item number field with. So I'm going to select the drop-down. This gives me a list of values that are contained in my SQL select statement over here. So I want to return the item number to my form. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. Now when I emulate the form, save it and emulate it. Now when I click on the ellipse, it brings up a list of items from the database. And the user can select one of those items, and it returns it back to the form. So let's say that you made a mistake, and after emulating the form, your SQL lookup doesn't look like you wanted it to look like. Well, you can start over. If you go back to your section here, there's a clear lookup value. So if I hit that button, it makes sure I want to get rid of the lookup, but I can go ahead and say yes. So now I can go back to my definition area for my lookup, and you'll see that my lookup SQL is gone. Last time we used the SQL Builder, and we selected our table, and then we selected the fields that it brought back. But let's say you're a little more proficient in SQL, and you like to write your own SQL. We have two choices. You could launch SQL Management Studio and write and test your code there. and then copy and paste it into this section. Or you could go into the advanced section and you could write your own SQL here. So I'm going to write my own SQL. And again, I'm going to use my WiSys view, select my item number, my description, and I'm going to also put my aliases in here. If you forget that part, you could also add those like we did originally into the column headers. And I'm going to go ahead and say save. As you can see, it formats our SQL. Our aliases are already populated, and all we need to do now is select our return field and save. And again, if I'm going to emulate my form, my lookup looks exactly as it did before. Two ways to get the end result. So next, I'm going to add a lookup for my location value. And again, I'm going to use the advanced section. I'm going to use the WiSys views. And this time I'm also going to grab the location description from the location master file. And because I'm grabbing two different tables, I need an inner join. And then I also need a where clause. And the where clause is because we already entered the item on the form. So we need to only find the locations that are equal to, that exist for the item that the user entered in the first field on the form. So I'm going to enter a where the item number equals. And if you don't remember the name of the field that's on your form, at the top of the screen here, these are all the values that are available to use in SQL code. So if I expand the item section here, this will show me the field and variable names of the fields that are on my form. So I'm going to go ahead and double click the text item. So now it's only going to find the locations that match the item that the user entered on the field on the screen in the first field. So I'm going to save. Again, my aliases are filled in. And now I need to select my return field. And I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to save, emulate my form again. I can use my item lookup. And now I have a location lookup. And now we've successfully added locations to our form. We've successfully added lookups to our form for the item number and the location. And this concludes the lesson on lookups.